Hey DIYers, today I got two simple projects that any of you, and I mean any of you out there, could do. They're simple, they're cheap, and it won't take much of your time. What more could you ask for? So let's go get started on the first project. And that first project, you guessed it, is replacing or fixing this broken screen here. And this project's very easy. So first we gotta get the screen out. Well, and that's easy. You got these two little tabs right here. You just lift up, push out, and out comes your screen. It's got these little springs on here that are used to hold it up in there. So when you put it back in here and you pull up on these little tabs and let it go, that spring keeps it pushed down and in the window. If you want to get real motivated, you could also clean all this out under here while you got your screen out. I mean, I'm just saying. All right, so to get started, you're gonna need you a nice flat area to work. Now I'm using my driveway here because as you can see, my workbench is kind of full and I got no room there. And you can see behind me, my garage is pretty full and I got no room there. I'm doing mine right here on the driveway, and I'm doing it on this cardboard so that the broom finish to my concrete driveway doesn't scratch up my frames. And then the only specialized tool you're gonna need is this right here, is a spline roller. And I'll tell you how we're gonna get that here in just a second. So the first thing you need to do is get a measurement of how wide of a screen you need. I'm about 32 5/8 by 28 1/2. You'll need to run to your home center and get some screen. Now this here is 36 by 84. You can get it a little narrower and you can definitely get it a lot longer. This here will be enough for me to do two screens, and that's exactly what I gotta do, is two screens. This here happens to be a black nylon, or actually they call it fiberglass. You can get it in wire or steel if you like. It's a little harder to work with. And then the next thing you're gonna need is some spline material. Now this spline material comes in different sizes. This here is what they call a 0.14 or 0.36 millimeters, and it's 25 feet. That's plenty to do two of these, and that's what I've got. This happens to be in gray, but you can get it in black. How do you know which spline to get? Well, that's very easy. Just take your screen here and a screwdriver, carefully just peel out a piece of the spline. But get you a small piece out just like this and take it with you to the store, match up the spline size that you need. Or if you want to get real fancy and you got digital calipers, you can measure how big it is, and then just go to the store and get whatever's closest. Now this happens to be the 0.36 millimeters or 0.14 inch. I've got it in a gray, but like I say, you can get black. And while you're there, pick you up a spline tool. And I highly, highly recommend you get the wooden handle one and not that cheaper, crappy old plastic one they have there. And I've already had one of those, and that's why I now have a wooden one. It's a lot better, and it's metal. So why is it important to make sure you get the correct spline size? Because it makes your life a whole lot easier. If you don't, and you get one that's too big, when you try to roll it down inside this little groove here, if it's too big, one, you might get it in there, but you're gonna work very, very hard at it, get very frustrated. You're probably gonna slip and screw up and put a hole in your new screen before you even get it done. And two, these little clips here, they go in this groove also down here, as you'll see, and so your spline and that gotta fit all in there. And if you got too big a spline, it ain't gonna work. And trust me, the first one of these I didn't have the right spline, and it didn't go well. So let's address this elephant that may come up in the comments. Some of you out there will probably comment, oh, I'll just go to the home center and buy a new one. You can do that, and I've done it. I've done it years and years ago. I bought one because when I tried to do this myself, I screwed it up, bent it, just made a horrible mess because I didn't know what I was doing. And that's where I'm gonna come in and help you, and so you don't have that problem. And I bought new ones. They had to be custom made. I had to measure and go in and have them custom made. I had to wait 2 weeks before I got them, and voila, there we go. Then I learned a little more on how to do it, and not off of YouTube, by the way. So let's say you do that now. I happened to look up on the Home Depot website just what that would cost. I went this size and I went smaller, and I just went normal standard screen. 65 bucks a screen. If it's bigger, costs a little more. If you get fancier screen material, it definitely goes up. I put in for giggles solar type screen material, shot it up to almost 100 bucks. I've got two of these to do, $65 a piece, 130 bucks. I can do this. So you're probably thinking, well, but you spent all that money on this. Well, let's go over that. I got those prices for you. The spline tool, the wooden one, the better one, $6. Spline material itself, whether it's this size or a little smaller or a little bigger, black, gray, it doesn't matter, $5. This screen, 36 by 84, which is going to be enough to do two of these, $8.28. So in these three materials right here, I've got $19.25, not even 20 bucks. For 20 bucks, you can go get this material and do it yourself and save $45. But some of you are thinking time is money. Well, I agree. But unless you're making $130 an hour, it's worth your time to fix this. Why did I say 130? Because you can probably do 2 of these in an hour. 65 a piece, 130 bucks. Some of you are gonna go, yeah, but it's too much. And if that's not convincing enough, you can get an actual screen kit that comes with the spline, the screen, plastic one of these, for a little under 11 bucks. And honestly, this is probably only gonna take about 30 minutes of your time. So for 11 bucks and 30 minutes of your time, I think it's well worth just fixing it versus going and buying a new one and waiting for it to be custom made and gotten to you. And besides, let's face it, most of you are gonna sit on your fat asses in front of the TV for a lot longer, wasting time drinking beer, belching and farting when you could have fixed this in that time frame. So come on. Okay, now that I've ranted and raved, let's move on. The other thing too, these little clips, if they break, you can get replacements of these. These little clips here break, you can get replacements of these. If these little corner pieces, I'll show you, break, you can get replacements of those. You can get a screen building kit where it comes where you cut the screen link, you put it all together, you put your ends in, you put these tops in, you put those little pull tabs on. A frame building kit for one frame this size is about 14 bucks where you custom make everything. So even if you do it that way, you're still saving money. So anyhow, so we got this done, and what I'm gonna do is just pull on the screen to get it out. And the reason is because this stuff is so rotted that it's just breaking up, and it'll be easier. Now be careful when you're doing this. You probably ought to do it flat on the ground and pull so you don't bend your frame. Because if you bend your frame, then we're back to square one. Now, before you get too far along, remember these little tabs go on the opposite side or the opposite end of these little clips, and two, these little pull tabs need to be on the inside. And so when you put these in, your spline rolling is going to be on the outside, and those will be on the inside of your screen. And the spline will be all one piece. There you see, all out. All right, so the only other tool you're going to need is a utility knife in order to cut the screen. So let's get started. So when you put this screen in, you want it tight, but you don't want it so tight that it's like a drum. Because if you do, what'll happen is when you're all done and you lift this up, it will actually flex and bend inward from that because it's too tight. So you want it tight, but you don't want it too tight, and you don't want to have wrinkles in it. I'm going to start at this end, and I'm going to roll it out. I'm going to start up here at this end, and you want to kind of start it somewhat even. If you get it off cockeyed, it's going to make it tough to get it tight and have enough for it to fit and be not having wrinkles in it. Spline material out here. And basically I'm gonna just start here and go around and end up back over here. But I'm gonna start at this end so I get these clips in and they're done and set. So there's two ends to this spline tool. One, this end here is flat. As you can see, the edge is flat, whereas this side here is grooved so that the spline material grooved down inside there when you put it in. Just because I'm OCD, 5.5. Get our screen material here. I'm going to have a little hang over the edge and a little hang over each side. And we'll start in this corner. I'm going to get it all the way over to that edge and just get it pushed into place. Now I'm going to use just the flat side to start to get it in there. And actually I'm going to take this little bitty screwdriver here and get this point down in there. Now you got to be careful because this screen will tear if you get too violent with it. So once you get it kind of started, just want to put a little pressure on the screen and hold the screen and the spline. Give it a little stretch, not much. I'm going to take the groove side and just run over it lightly to start with. You see how that's just falling down in there? Then I'll come back with the non-groove side, get it set in there really good, and I just do little bits at a time. This part right here where the clip is a little bit harder because you kind of jam two things into that groove, and it's going to fill it up a little more. So you just go gentle, easy, and slow. Okay, it's in there nice and tight. And that's another way you can tell if your spline's too big, it'll be hard to put it in. This is going in very easy. Pulling a little bit on the screen, but I'm not yanking on it real hard. The same with the spline. I'm stretching the spline just a little bit to get it in there. And you want to keep your tool on the spline and not on the screen. Because if you do that, this spline, you press hard enough, this spline will cut the screen and you'll have to start over. And believe me, it's no fun. Pull on the screen, pull on the spline, and repeat. Coming to the end. All right, we got one side done. You're gonna notice is I got a little more on this side than I do this side. When you're doing this, you gotta be careful, because see, this is already going diagonal. So you gotta keep an eye on that, otherwise you're gonna get done, you'll get over here, and your screen will be inside here, and you won't have anything to work to, and you have to start over, and that's a pain, and I don't want you to have to do that. It's just little nuances, is all it is. Now this stretches a little bit, but we don't want to stretch it a lot, remember, because it'll cause the frame to bow in. Okay, for turning the corner, it can be a little tricky. I'm gonna have a little screwdriver with me, like this. And the reason is this tool doesn't get all the way up in that corner as much as you would like. Put a little tension on the screen here. We're gonna turn this spline, and we're just gonna get like a couple inches or an inch or so started. Don't push too hard and cut the spline with your screwdriver. Now we'll just rinse and repeat down that side. We'll pull on our screen just a little bit. We already got it crooked, so we don't want to try and straighten it out, because you see you'll get a fold in it. We'll get our spline stretched down here a little ways and proceed. And now might be a time for me to tell you about one other way you could do this. And that is, if you can find a place that actually repairs screens and does glass, you can take your frame to them with the old screen in it. They'll take it out and replace it and do it for you. And those guys are very quick. They'll have this done in 10 minutes. What they charge, I have no idea. This side here, this is very crucial. You've got two sides, and as you see, each time I get less and less over here. Because again, I want this tight, but I don't want it real tight, and I want it square so that there's no wrinkles in here. So if I get this off a little like that, you can see those wrinkles. If anything, I'm gonna pull just a hair towards this side, and I'm gonna do two things at once. I'm gonna pull on this screen just like before. I'm gonna pull on this spline and start down here and roll it in. You can see that's why I stretch the spline, because as you roll it, it stretches out and you get a slack in it. This last little ½ inch, I'm gonna take my utility knife and I'm gonna just cut the spline, but I'm gonna cut it just a hair back, because you know it's gonna stretch into that corner. Take my spline tool and roll it in. Now I'm gonna take my utility knife and I'm gonna cut right along inside the frame next to the spline. There we have it, all finished. No wrinkles, no buckles. It's not causing the frame to be bowed in. Looks like brand new. That was too simple. You can do this. Let's go put it back and see the finished product. Put the little clips in the groove, handles down here, slap it in place, and done. Now you gotta admit, that was pretty easy. Let me know down in the comments if this is something you would try. It's really pretty easy. On a 1 to 10 scale, let's do 2. And look how much nicer it looks compared to this old one that's all faded out. New and nice, old and faded. Alrighty, so let's move on to our next item. It's kind of a repair, upgrade, fix combo in one. All right, the second project brings us indoors. Has to do with this hole in the wall and this broken doorstop down here. And both of these problems are related to the front door. And what I mean is when this door opens, that stopper down there doesn't stop the door and allows the doorknob to hit the wall. Now this is a different doorknob. They had a round doorknob on here that caused that hole. So how do we fix these? Well, I'm gonna show you the easiest way to do it. There's a couple other ways to do it, but I'm gonna show you the easy way. But first, let me tell you that way that we're not gonna do it. Best way to repair this would be to get you some joint compound and some joint tape, because this is busted enough that the paper's torn. You don't want spackling. This is too big of a hole for spackling. It'll look like crap if you use spackling, but you want to get some joint compound. Probably could use the fast setting stuff. Put over here, put your joint tape over it, get this mudded, get it all feathered out, sanded, looking beautiful. And in my case, I'd have to retexture the wall around it to match, paint, and have it fixed. And because that's a little more involved, that's why we're not gonna do it that way today. That's a later project. So the way I'm gonna do it's much easier, and we're just gonna put this door shield on there. 1, it covers the hole so nobody knows, and 2, the door hits it and now protects it. Now these come in different sizes. I got the smaller one. They get them really big. I didn't need that. Just open the package up here. It's got double-sided tape on the back side. Stick it to the wall, press it on firmly, job fixed. Now, before anybody wigs out, these are paintable, so if your wall's a different color than what this is, not a problem. You can paint it and it'll match and it'll blend in. Now, this is fixed, but the problem that caused it is not, and that's what we really need to deal with. So, let's put our attention to this door stop. So you see the door stop is basically bent and broken. And some of you might say, well, it's because of the door stop itself. You should have had a solid one that wouldn't do that. No, it has nothing to do with that. What it actually has to do with is the door. So when the door opens and it comes in contact with this, you can already see that the door stop itself is at an angle to the door. Instead of the door stop hitting square on the door like this, it's hitting at an angle, which automatically, if you hit too hard, it's going to cause this spring to do just that and let it hit the wall. So even if you had a solid one there, you run the risk of it still breaking it off and the same thing happening. The issue has to do with this little bit of wall right here. Because of this offset, if you will, or this little piece of wall, when the door opens, it allows the door to come past 90, which automatically puts the door at an angle to the wall, which means it's going to have an angle on that door stop. Whereas if the door could only open to 90 degrees, that'd work just fine. So how can we fix this? Again, I'm going to show you the simple way. Now, the simple way doesn't involve replacing this. It actually involves just removing it and getting rid of it. So with the hole that's left behind, this is just old MDF trim here that I'm actually going to replace. Don't tell my wife. What you could do is you could just take some caulking and fill the hole and paint over it, wood putty or spackling even, and put over it and sand it and paint it and look fine. The one way you could do this, it's a little more involved, but I'm not going to do it, would be to drill a hole in the floor and get like those commercial type door stops you see where they're anchored into the floor, and when the door opens it hits against them, and you'd have to put it, you know, clear out here to do it. I guess you could put it back here, but I'm not going to do that, so I'm going to show you a different way. So don't go anywhere after I show you how to fix this problem, because how I fix this one, I'm going to do it in a couple other areas and for a little different reasons, and then I'm actually going to show you how to just replace those door stops if you want to upgrade or they're broke like this. How are we going to replace this? Well, it's going to involve putting a stop on the door hinge. And then another way involves hinge pin door stops. And that's these little gizmos right here. They come in different finishes, but this is what it looks like. This part here is adjustable, and this little plastic thing here is also adjustable, and I'll show you why. First thing we need to do is take out our top hinge pin. And for that, I'm just using a punch and a ball peen hammer. This is how I do it. They make hinge pin springs. It's a little tool you put in there, pull on the spring, let go, and it pops it out. I find this to be just as easy, and it's tools I've already got. You take your hinge pin, and it's going to go through this hole here. So how I'm going to install this, it could go like this, so that this sits flat on your door, like that, and then this screw's adjustable on your trim. The other way you could do it would be like this if you wanted, but I'm going to do it like this so that I got a bigger, flatter area, surface area on my door. Pin through here, put it back in the hinge, take our hammer, tap the pin all the way in. Now that'll fit against the door, and then we set this screw to where we want it. Now I can set it to where the door only opens 90 or less than 90 or more than 90. So what I'm going to do is set it so that it doesn't engage the wall. In fact, it gives me a couple inches away from the wall so that I got some buffer. Now I tell you, was that simple or was that simple? I said, don't go nowhere. Let me show you how I can use this elsewhere. Now where else I can use that is here in this laundry room. I've got two doors. It's very small. It opens to 90. I actually have a door stop on the back side of this. And this door here also opens to 90. And I don't have a door stop on the back of it. We've been lucky it hasn't punched a hole in. So why would I want it here? Well, because that door stop's actually kind of in the way. I can do the same thing, adjust the same way. No door stops on the trim. That's another thing. If you put new trim in, you don't have to mar your new trim up with door stop. I can keep it from hitting the wall. So there's another option. Now something I did different on this door in the laundry room is instead of putting it up there in the top hinge, I put it in the center hinge. That way it's stopping in the center of the door versus the top. Now here's another example where that'll work. See this big old divot in the wall? That's because of these window shades. I've got a door stop down there at the bottom, but it doesn't do a whole lot of good when you open the door and the window shade hits before the door does. So I'll do the same thing. I'll put a door stop on this hinge. Now I'd love to put it on this center hinge like I did in the laundry room, but these center hinges don't come out. So I'll put it up here, and the door stop that's in the base molding down there, I'm just going to take it out and get rid of it. So here's two other reasons why I'm replacing these door stops. I'm putting spring-loaded ones back in. I like these, but this is why. that right there. This was a solid one, and it's so cheap that a few hits and this came off. Now I have these other spring-loaded kind, but they twist on like this. And what I don't like is if they get hit a bunch like that, they wind up coming loose and falling out, and I have to put them back, and I don't like that. I like the spring-loaded, so when I'm vacuuming and cleaning, I can go along like this and get under it and hit it, and it'll spring back and forth, and I don't do anything with it. These, when they're in there, if you hit them, guess what? That's just what happens. And since this is broke, I just take a pair of pliers, screw this out, and the screw on this, that screw, and the screw that holds this on are all the same size. So you don't have to worry about one being bigger or smaller than the other, and the hole being not going to work. Put this one right back in the same hole. And these come in different finishes. And like that, it's replaced. Well, there you have it. 2 simple, easy projects any of you out there can do. And let's face it, I'll bet most of you have one or maybe even both of these projects on your honey-do list. And if you had to do one or even both of them, it might take a couple hours. A couple hours out of your time gets it off your honey-do list. Go back and belching and farting on the couch. The only difference is your wife will be a little happier you got some of the honey-do list done. And some other simple repairs that you might need to do are right here on this playlist you can click and check out. They might also be on your honey-do list. So until next time, happy DIYing.